These are the guests who walked onto Johnny Carson's Tonight Show 3 sheets to the wind and turned late-night television into something no producer alive could keep a lid on. Number 12. Ed McMahon.
Several plus several will be about 9.
You said 7 or 8.
No, no, I didn't say 7 or 8. I said several.
Then you said 7 or 8, and I said
Did
it's
I?
9. Yes.
9. Good, thank you.
We open with an inside job because the first name here never counted as a guest at all. Ed McMahon was the sidekick. For 30 years, Ed sat inches away from Johnny Carson as the warm-up, the announcer, the laugh, and the loyal right hand.
Some of the animals you had as babies are now 10 years old.
That would be about right.
Ed was the actual sound of the show, which meant the night he showed up loaded, every viewer in America clocked it instantly. The date was April 8, 1977, and a long lunch beforehand had clearly gotten away from him.
Joan Embry is here tonight.
And she's now 32.
That's right.
By the time the cameras rolled, McMahon had crossed the line from cheerful into visibly gone, fumbling his way through the opening segment while Carson watched it happen. Being Carson, he refused to pretend everything was fine.
Would you like an army cot or something? Maybe just to kind of catch up on a little nappy poo? Just might snap you right out of it.
Turning to his oldest colleague on air and telling him flat out, "You're not fooling anyone tonight." Ed circled back to the whole mess years later in his autobiography, and mortified is the polite word for how he described it.
And you really think you're fooling everybody, don't you?
No.
And she does her 3 horse shows a day. Did you know that?
Boy.
What?
What an exciting idea.
Gratitude ran underneath the embarrassment, though, because Carson steered a genuinely awkward night away from a career-ending scandal with one gentle, professional touch. Here's a bit of trivia the older crowd will enjoy.
Doc has never seen her. You've never seen her. I went to the wild animal farm.
It's all right. It's okay.
But you're upsetting me. You're upsetting me.
No, I don't upset you.
Plenty of people picture Ed as the publisher's clearinghouse man, marching up the driveway with a giant check. That memory is wrong. Ed McMahon actually fronted the direct competitor, American Family Publishers. And your brain has been swapping the two for years.
Don't say... No.
What?
I know her. I went down and...
Oh, I know you did. I know you went down there. And
I held a baby gorilla.
I couldn't go with you that week. You held a baby gorilla. Good, all right.
Number 11. Robert Blake. Where Ed was a friendly slip, our next guest played the opposite role entirely. Robert Blake made the room tense the second he lowered himself into the chair. Throughout the mid to late 1970s, the actor turned up on The Tonight Show with one setting, and that setting was volatility. Blake arrived spoiling for a confrontation, ready to swing at anybody in reach, openly challenging fellow guests and going after network executives to their faces. Making people squirm seemed to be the point for him. His most notorious flare-up landed in 1976. An on-air feud with a legend we'll meet in a few minutes. But the bigger consequence reached past that single night. Blake's talent for turning the couch into a battleground pushed Carson and his producers into building a strict screening policy designed to keep people exactly like him off the guest list. Blake owned up to the damage himself down the road, admitting that all those tirades against, in his words, the suits, wrecked his reputation and helped derail his acting career. He talked his own way out of the room. Number 10. Robin Williams.
Most of those evangelists are very conscious of how the hair looks, and they got great suits and great ties and
wonderful
big
stuff.
carnations.
Big dead roses right here. I could not save this flower, but I will save ye.
Some performances were so wild that people still argue about them, and this is the one where the argument never really ends. Genius, chaos, or both, the honest answer covers all three.
I believe that comedy can heal you. Praise the power.
Praise the Jesus.
And Sears had a sale this furniture went cheap.
Robin Williams landed in 1981 on the massive momentum of Mork and Mindy, and detonated is the only fair verb for what followed. Sweating, grinding his teeth, physically incapable of holding still, he shredded every rule about how a guest is supposed to behave.
Mama, I'm on TV. For my friends in San Francisco, how are you? Nine, go.
Up he went at the overhead microphone to become a dolphin. Then came the rapid-fire riffs on the most taboo topics of the day, one voice colliding into the next so fast the audience could barely keep pace, and Carson dissolved into helpless laughter.
Look at this thing. Look, Flipper.
Right now there's a sound man going, "What are you doing?"
Critics hailed the set as a comedic triumph, which meant almost nobody realized it arrived during one of the darkest stretches of his life, a period of heavy drinking and chemical excess. Williams spoke about that era plainly in later years, describing those habits as the very things quietly dragging him under.
Oh, it's Reverend Gene Scott's the best to watch because he's always like, "Believe me, I take no medication, but I'm on TV 48 hours a day. Come on, send that money now."
Everything shifted when his close friend John Belushi in 1982, a loss that shook him into chasing real, lasting sobriety. His comedy stayed manic and physical afterward, but the fuel changed from chemicals to pure, disciplined craft.
There's some exciting Christmas gifts. They have the Jessica Hahn doll. It doesn't do anything, just falls over and goes, "Maybe."
A separate cloud followed him for years too, with fellow stand-ups accusing Williams of lifting their material, and some comics rewrote their routines the moment they spotted him in the audience.
Little candy cane for the hypoglycemic children. Thank you, Daddy.
Number 9. Richard Harris. A lot of these stories are tragedies, and this one is the exception that earns its place because it ends with the man still on his feet. Richard Harris survived. The Irish actor and singer belonged to the mid-century Hellraiser crowd, and he carried that energy onto The Tonight Show as big, booming, barroom storytelling. Harris spun epic tales of legendary nights out with his equally rowdy friends, and he made hard drinking sound like an Olympic event.
The last time you were here, you were talking about no more cigarettes and you weren't drinking anymore, or?
Well, I'm off the booze.
Behind those charming yarns, though, ran a serious battle. A near-fatal disease struck in 1978, and a few years later, in 1982, doctors handed him a blunt verdict that would take him inside 18 months unless he quit drinking. Here's where Harris parts company with almost everyone else on this countdown.
I got a telegram from my liver.
Really?
He said, "Help."
He listened, sobriety took hold, and he protected it for years, rebuilding a career that earned him an Academy Award nomination for the field. In 1992, he strolled back onto that same Tonight Show stage, this time to reflect on his life and the plain fact that he was still around to talk about it. Harris walked out the same door he could easily have never reached. Number 8. Orson Welles. Next comes one of the greatest minds in the history of film, paired with one of the most impossible guests Carson ever tried to steer. Orson Welles was both at once. The man behind Citizen Kane spent much of his later career bankrolling his passion projects through talk shows and voiceover work, which translated into a steady stream of visits to Carson's couch. Brilliant described him perfectly, and so did uncontrollable. More than once, Welles turned up under the influence, slurring his lines and wrestling with the tidy structure of a talk show segment. His signature move was the runaway monologue, and one legendary appearance saw him seize the floor for a 14-minute unbroken stretch that completely hijacked the show's pacing. Mesmerizing, absolutely. Manageable, not even close. Welles also slid into public, drink-fueled sparring matches right there on the cushions. The most famous one aimed at our earlier guest Robert Blake back in 1976. For all that genius, his unpredictability slowly wore Carson down, and the ending was quiet. A soft ghosting where the future bookings simply stopped arriving. Number 7. Tallulah Bankhead. This entry earns its ranking twice over, once for how impaired she was and once for the company she was keeping when it happened. Tallulah Bankhead picked an unforgettable night to fall apart. A genuine Broadway and Hollywood legend, Bankhead built her fame on that gravelly voice and a personality that answered to nobody. By the late 1960s, years of hard living had collected their debt, eroding her health and her sharpness through a dangerous mix of prescription pills and drink. On May 14, 1968, she appeared on a Tonight Show that Carson wasn't even hosting, since baseball man Joe Garagiola occupied the chair that evening. And this is where the collision gets brutal. The main guests that night were John Lennon and Paul McCartney, on hand to announce the formation of Apple Course, a genuine cultural summit unfolding on live television. Incoherent and clearly unwell, Bankhead kept cutting into the interview with strange, out-of-nowhere questions that made everybody in the room shrink. 22 minutes the segment dragged on, and Lennon later branded it the most embarrassing thing I've ever been on. Old Hollywood crashed head-on into the new counterculture, and nobody walked away a winner. Bankhead passed away later that very year, in December of 1968. Number 6. Peter O'Toole.
You remember your first appearance on this show? I think it was the first and last appearance. And I still get people asking me when I go out about moments on the Tonight Show and strange things that have happened, and your name comes up.
Now we reach a man who turned being completely gone into a genuine art form. Peter O'Toole made impairment look like a plan. The acclaimed British actor and 8-time Academy Award nominee, ranked among the great hellraisers of the post-war generation.
You came on the show one night, and I said, well, Peter, it's nice to have you here. And you said something like,
January 13th, 1978 marked his debut on the show, seated beside comedian Buddy Hackett, and by his own cheerful confession afterward, O'Toole was absolutely from the first minute to the last.
And I said, well, I've enjoyed your work, and how long are you planning to be here? And Peter said something to the effect of,
What set him apart from the guests who simply crumbled was the foundation underneath. Decades of classical theatrical training held him upright, and he funneled every ounce of that impairment into brilliant, chaotic physical comedy.
Then I thought that this horrible thing crossed my mind. I says, he's bombed out of his gourd.
Grabbing a prop, he launched into impromptu desk fencing with Carson, leaning so far into his eccentric charm that a potential car crash flipped into one of late night's most beloved moments.
And the audience, of course, didn't believe it at all, because they always want to believe the worst, don't they? And they thought you were your gourd or something like that.
Well, you're very kind.
The show loved it enough to bring him back later in 1978 for a follow-up segment, where a straight-faced O'Toole attempted to explain his own behavior. Most people who arrive that far gone never see a second invitation, and O'Toole turned it into the entire attraction.
So we were... That's true.
Now you're talking!
Number 5. Truman Capote. We're closing in on the top, and this is where the laughter gets harder to summon, because this fall is a genuine tragedy. Truman Capote had the furthest to drop. The celebrated author of Breakfast at Tiffany's and In Cold once ranked among the couch's favorite guests. Razor-sharp wit paired with high society gossip that played like pure entertainment.
Well, I've been to bed, but a number of people.
His life had been unraveling for a while, though. In 1975, he published a thinly veiled story in Esquire that spilled the intimate secrets of his own wealthy social circle. And the result was instant banishment by the very people he'd spent a lifetime among.
I mean, that's the Joker in the car.
Coping with that isolation, he leaned hard into drink and chemical excess, and his health caved. All of it surfaced during a devastating 1980 appearance on The Tonight Show, where Capote sat visibly impaired, slurring his words, unable to assemble a coherent sentence.
You know, my life is so strange. It's not like anybody.
No, I'm sure of that.
An on-air meltdown that effectively closed his television career. One bad night doesn't cover it. Earlier that same year, a hallucinatory put him in the hospital and permanently changed his mind. Capote passed away on August 25, 1984, at 59 years old, at the Bel Air home of Joanne Carson, Johnny's ex-wife and one of his last remaining friends.
Have you been drinking? You mean very lately?
You have had a history of alcoholism.
Liver disease took him in the end, worsened by the chemical excess that had defined his final years, and the man who once dominated every room could no longer finish a thought on camera. Number 4. Oliver Reed and Shelley Winters.
You have met before. And
You know, there's no way.
Please be quiet for a minute.
Here it is, the wildest, most out-of-control broadcast of the entire run, the one that ended in a permanent ban and a moment nobody who saw it ever shook loose. Oliver Reed and Shelley Winters made history the hard way. The British actor Oliver Reed was famous for a hyper-masculine screen image and a drinking habit that punished him as much as it defined him.
Will you please be quiet for a minute while I talk to this gentleman? I'm on the show to talk, not just to hear you, madam.
Yes, sir.
In 1974, he ranked as the highest-paid British actor in the business, and he reportedly once put away 100 pints across a single 24-hour stretch. September 26, 1975 brought all of that onto Carson's stage.
Women's liberation, madam, will never survive. Not while I'm in the kitchen.
And Reed, already deep into the drink before airtime, turned aggressive inside the first few seconds. And this is where it went off the rails completely. Reed launched into deeply provocative, misogynistic commentary.
Will you take off your shoe?
One?
Because on the bottom of your shoe, you have some Do you know why that's on there? So she won't fall over.
Announcing that the women's liberation movement would never survive, cranking the tension to a boiling point. He'd picked the wrong woman to push around.
The women in England are quite good. They're always in the kitchen, so you can't hear them when they shout.
A double Academy Award winner and a serious alumna of the Actors Studio, Winters reached her limit as Reed ordered the women in the audience to be quiet and ran down women's equality.
Women's liberationists, if they thought about that. Shh! Quiet, woman!
Up, she stood. Across the stage, she marched, and she emptied her entire glass of whiskey right over his head on live television, then turned on her heel and walked off, leaving Reed soaked through. A few accounts try to claim Reed got banned before he ever reached the couch, but the record settles it cleanly, since the permanent ban came down the instant that broadcast ended. Drink, live cameras, and a room full of clashing egos gave you the #1 moment on this list. Now let's get to the great pretenders. The Guess Who Fooled You. Some of the drunkest guests in Tonight Show history never swallowed a single drop. Number 3, Foster Brooks.
My sister-in-law and her husband went to see the gorilla. They were standing there, and they were looking at it, and all of a sudden the gorilla spotted my sister-in-law, and he just couldn't take his eyes off her.
Born in Louisville, Kentucky, Brooks came up as a polished, buttoned-up radio and television announcer at stations like WHAS, WHAM, and WGR. Perry Como discovered him in 1969, which opened a Vegas booking which delivered him straight onto The Tonight Show.
All of a sudden he went, and my brother-in-law nudged her and he said, I think he kind of goes for you. And she said, don't be silly.
There, Brooks built his whole reputation on the lovable drunk, and he engineered it down to a science. Calculated belches, sudden jumps in pitch, and flawlessly slurred phrasing.
And with that, the gorilla grabbed a couple of the bars and pulled them real far apart, reached out, tell him you got a headache.
Convincing barely covers it, and the joke ran deeper than the audience knew because Foster Brooks stayed a strict teetotaler at the absolute peak of his fame.
Such a convincing drunk. By observing and taking on the mannerisms of people?
I tell a lot of stories.
Precision defined him so completely that producers booked him to roast major celebrities, and he ran those complicated routines while entirely sober. Number 2, Dean Martin. Then arrives the biggest illusion of them all. Dean Martin. For years, the image held firm. A cigarette in one hand, a whiskey glass in the other. The ultimate wasted playboy grinning through it.
I got so much money, it's disgusting. What good is it? $800 for an apple.
His segment on December 12, 1975 sold that picture to perfection, and none of it was real. Martin's family, his daughter Deanna among them, along with his closest colleagues, later confirmed that the glass in his hand held apple juice.
You know, everybody's made the jokes for years. I've been guilty of making the jokes, and it's, you don't drink that much, do you?
What do you mean?
It's a prop more than anything. You come on.
This ain't no prop.
Oh, I know. Juice.
Away from the cameras, Dean Martin lived as a disciplined creature of habit, playing golf, eating dinner with his family, and watching television at home. The wild playboy amounted to a character he switched on.
Put juice in there, and everybody says, look at Dean, he's up there, and how can he do a show and drink that way? I've seen you in the MGM, and you sit there and all during you sip this, and it's, I'll tell you.
In fairness, the whole thing isn't perfectly black and white, since some biographers argue that the TV act ran pure theater while Martin still wrestled with real drinking in his private hours. What the country watched on air, though, was a performance.
You know that Merv asks you a question and he never listens to you? Did you know that? He'll say, how do you feel? And he'll turn around like that.
Staged chaos like that reached back years. On March 6, 1969, George Gobel settled in beside a very animated Dean Martin and Bob Hope, and Martin kept flicking his cigarette ashes into Gobel's drink.
I think I haven't checked the paper.
Until Gobel answered with one of the most famous deadpan lines the show ever produced, comparing himself to a certain unfortunate piece of footwear stranded in a room full of formal wear. The whole thing looked like a total drunken free-for-all.
When you come on last, did you ever get the feeling that the world was a tuxedo and you were a pair of brown shoes?
What it actually delivered was precision comedy, timed down to the second. Number 1. Johnny Carson himself. One more figure belongs in this story, and he was the calmest man on that stage every single night, which makes the truth behind him the most surprising turn of all. Johnny Carson hid the biggest secret in the building. On camera, Carson ran flawless, cool, collected, always holding the reins. His own relationship with drink, away from the lights, told a far darker story.
Johnny, he was sweet, he was nice, except whenever we were drinking. Some guys drink and they get a little bit mean and tough.
A deeply private, introverted man, he usually reached the studio only an hour or two before taping, spending his days alone to conserve his energy. Privately, that smooth persona evaporated the moment he drank. People who knew him, former athletes like Joe Namath included, described Carson as a combative, bad drunk who went hunting for a fight after one glass too many.
Johnny used to get tough.
Really?
Tough. I saw him our linebacker.
His first wife, Jody Wolcott, and his neighbor Truman Capote both documented episodes where the drinking triggered an explosive temper and accusations surfaced about his conduct behind closed doors. It reached the public record on August 27, 1982, the day Carson got arrested for driving under the influence in California. True to form, he refused to hide, strolling out and joking about the arrest in his very next monologue, defusing the whole scandal with self-deprecating humor. For all that success, and his Bel Air estate has carried an estimated value of $40 million, Carson stayed profoundly isolated. He skipped the of both his parents, and he passed away, largely alone, in January of 2005 at the age of 79. There it is, the genuinely loaded, the theatrical pretenders, and the ice-cold host carrying his own storms behind a calm face. Every one of these stories traces back to the show itself. Across 3 decades, The Tonight Show ran on a loose, unscripted spirit that let real human vulnerability spill onto live television. The wit, the chaos, the private battles, all of it out in the open. Catching each of those moments and turning them into something we'd still be replaying half a century later fell to Johnny Carson, one of the most guarded men in the business. That world has vanished. Modern late-night runs scripted, media-trained, and locked down tight. Engineered so a whiskey dump or a 14-minute hijacking could never slip through again. That's exactly why these nights still feel like magic. They were the last of their kind, a stretch of years when nobody was fooling anyone, and nobody could bring themselves to look away.